Changing my hydroponic nutrients this morning. What I do is I take the tailpiece off that goes into the reservoir and put an elbow on to reroute it out of the reservoir. Leave the pumps on and pump it pretty much dry. And then once I've got most of the nutrients out of the reservoir, I'll go ahead and empty this cooler and start back with fresh. Doesn't take long. Really the only maintenance to do once a week in the garden. So there is the reservoir all emptied and sprayed out. As you can see, I've got 3 feeder lines connected to 3 300-gallon-per-hour pumps. I put them in a paint strainer basket so no perlite or anything gets into the impellers and harms the pumps. Pumps aren't too expensive. They were about $15 or $16 a piece. I bought them online. I tried it with one pump to start with, and there just wasn't enough pressure to supply 48 buckets, so I ended up putting 1 pump per row, and that worked out pretty good. A little aggravating to set up, but once it's set up, not too bad. But now it's just a matter of mixing fresh nutrients and closing the lid and turning the pumps back on. So I'm about to mix the nutrients to refill the reservoir for my hydroponic setup. And I use Master Blend tomato formula for the entire setup. Basically, you've got your Master Blend nutrient. You've got some dissolvable calcium nitrate. And you've got Epsom salts. And I did the math. And if my math's correct, the proportions I use is 1 tablespoon of the Master Blend for 8 gallons of water, 1 tablespoon of the calcium nitrate for 8 gallons of water, and a half a tablespoon of the Epsom salts. And what I do is I take the first tablespoon of Master Blend and dissolve it in a 5-gallon bucket, and then I will take a tablespoon of the calcium nitrate, put it in a mason jar, and shake it up while the bucket's about half full with the Master Blend dissolved. Then I'll add the calcium nitrate, and then once it's mixed pretty good, I'll do the same thing with the Epsom salts. I'll put a half a tablespoon in the mason jar and shake it up and add it to the bucket. I usually mix it in a 5-gallon bucket that's marked for volume, and I'll mix 1 bucket of nutrients for 4 gallons, and then for every 4 gallons of nutrients I add to the reservoir, I'll add 4 gallons of plain water. I'm using mine water so I don't have to worry about any problems with chlorine or anti-chlor. The pH runs really good, less than 8, so I know that it's pretty good stable water. But that's what I'm going to do next, is refill the reservoir. Then I just drop the lid on the cooler, hang my bucket that's got my power supply back in it on the post. Basically, I just drilled a hole in a bucket in the bottom, ran the cord up through there, put a power strip in so I can plug my pumps up, run the cords up through the bottom of the bucket, and then I hang it on a hook there and put the lid on it so it's waterproof. So that's the whole deal. Once a week or so, you just have to keep an eye on your reservoir and make sure you don't run your pumps dry or lose any nutrient. And that's really all the maintenance there is once you've got it all set up. Well, besides trellising up the tomatoes, that takes a few minutes. But I guess I better get to work. So here it is, filled up. In case you're interested, it takes about roughly 32 gallons of water to fill up a 7-day Rubbermaid cooler. Then all I need to do is close the lid, making sure that the pumps don't move. And then once you've got it closed, you put the tailpiece back on for the return line on the drain, hang the bucket up, turn the pumps back on, and that's it. The whole process from start to finish, from emptying the reservoir out, spraying it out, cleaning it out, mixing the nutrients, filling it back up, took less than 35 minutes. And most of that time is waiting for a water hose to fill up a 5-gallon bucket 8 times. But that's the regular maintenance that you have to do once a week. Now, as it gets along into the growth cycle and the tomato plants start getting bigger, they'll use more water naturally. So instead of once a week, sometimes it's twice a week. You just have to keep an eye on your reservoir and keep it topped up. Other than that, that's all there is to this. That and trellising a few tomatoes. Anyway, that's the whole deal on changing your nutrients.